Make sense? Good. Good. Okay. This is a hologram. This is a hologram. Our bodies are holographic. Our universe is holographic. In the holograph, there is no here and there. It's already everywhere. Everything is happening everywhere at once. Ancient traditions describe this experience in what is called the great spiritual mystery. And the mystery looks like this. I'd like to share the mystery with you in the ancient words, and then we'll look at the mystery in the language of science. And you'll see that it's precisely the same thing. The ancient tradition said something that you and I do in our lives triggers a process inside of our bodies. And that process interacts with the forces of creation and affects our physical world. So the great spiritual mystery says that something that we do in our lives affects our physical world. If we do not understand this mystery, when we see it happen, we say it's a miracle. If we do understand, no miracle. Now, it's technology. Technologique. Oh. Technologique. Oh. No? Ah, that. Okay. Thank you. By the end of today, you will understand the divine matrix. I will understand Italian. And it's all good. It's all good. So this is the great spiritual mystery. Now look at what the science from the experiments, they say the same thing in different words. Look at this. They say that heart-based feeling and emotion changes the DNA in our bodies. When the DNA changes, it produces quantum effects that change our physical world, and we have said precisely the same thing. Just different words. Same thing. The spiritual tradition said something that we do in our bodies changes our physical world. The science is saying heart-based feeling and emotion. I'm going to introduce a word. The word is coherent emotion. Coherent emotion. We'll work with this after lunch. After lunch, you and I will discover how we create coherent emotions in our hearts to heal our bodies and to change our world. Coherent emotion changes our physical world, and this is how John Wheeler, Princeton physicist, says we are participating in the world. And I like this word a lot. This is important because there's a responsibility that comes with understanding the language of the divine matrix. It's not that we control our world. It's not that we manipulate our world. It's not that we impose our will upon the world. We participate. We share in the unfolding of our reality. And it's all done through the power of our beliefs. Through the power of our beliefs. I'd like to shift gears just for a moment. Just change just for a moment. I want to share with you a project that was conducted at Princeton University in the United States. It was a project designed to find out how real this field of consciousness really is. And I think the results amazed even the scientists who were working on the project. You may have heard of this, or maybe not. It was called the Global Consciousness Project, GCP. Has anyone heard of the Global Consciousness Project? Okay, this is amazing. Let me share with you what happened. The scientists at Princeton University discovered that certain kinds of electronics actually change the way they work in the presence of human consciousness and the changes in consciousness. So in other words, the electronics were able to measure the consciousness. Based on these discoveries, Princeton University built 40 little devices, and they planted them all over the earth, on every continent, that could measure human consciousness and send the measurements to one computer at Princeton University so that the scientists could see the changes in human consciousness all over the earth in any moment in time. For example, here's what they did. They had 40 little devices. They placed these all over the earth. And they all are sending information to one computer, Princeton University. And on that computer, when any moment of the day, they can measure the changes in the consciousness of the earth. And here's what they discovered. On September 11th, 2001, this equipment was in place. And you can imagine what it showed. That the consciousness of the people of the earth registered a tremendous spike on the scale. But there's something even more interesting that happened, and it's why I'm sharing this with you today. Because what they found is this. Although the small devices did measure a change on September 11th, the changes actually began a full day before September 11th ever happened. Something began to happen in human consciousness, and that there were signals in our consciousness. We knew something was about to happen. Maybe not consciously, but we knew it. So let me show you the chart. Here's what happened. It says that they detected this change hours, almost 24 hours before 9/11 ever happened in New York and Washington. Here's a chart. So here are the dates: September 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, September 11th, 12th, and 13th. Okay, so those are the dates on the X scale. The vertical scale is showing something that's a little complicated, and I'm going to do my best to explain this. On an average day, when we are just going about our business, going to the mall, going to work, on the freeway, with our families, in a conference, on an average day like this, everyone is in their own conscious space. So consciousness is just kind of humming along. However, when something big happens in the world, like the death of Princess Diana, or the marriage of a queen, or the election of a president, or September 11th, or the national soccer tournament playoffs. Congratulations for the soccer. It's not all bad things. It's just when human consciousness is focused on one event, it will show up on the Princeton University computer. Okay? So does that make sense? You kind of okay with that? So here's what happened. Here's the chart. September 7th, September 8th, everybody is going about life, daily life, everything is good. But look at this. September 10th, something began to change. September 11th has not happened yet. But in the consciousness field, something was already happening. September 10th. Okay, September 11th, spike all the way up to the top, September 12th and the 13th. But here's what's important. To me, what's important is that we were able to detect a shift in the consciousness field before September 11th ever even happened. And that's the reason that I'm sharing this with you today. This field, consciousness, is part of our divine matrix. And it's so real that we can actually measure things like this. So now scientists are asking the question, is it possible? Is it possible that we can use this technology to help predict when something big is going to happen on the planet? So in other words, if the scientists at Princeton University, if they're looking at their computer and they begin to see something like this happening, and there is no soccer tournament playoff, and there is no marriage of the Queen, and there is no death of Princess Diana, then they say something is about to happen. Something is about to happen. And this is one application I'm sharing with you. The divine matrix and the consciousness field is so real that they're actually using it in this way. So are you okay with this? Does it make sense what we're doing here? So, if we're going to use this force in our lives, first we have to understand how it works. So let me ask you a question. Do you kind of feel like you understand how this field works? That the field is holographic, it is entangled, that it looks like filaments? You know, it's interesting because the ancient traditions of the Aboriginal peoples and the Native American peoples, they didn't have the technology that we have today, but they knew the field was there. And they described it as a web of energy or a net of energy because they could see it in their mind. It was only when our equipment was able to detect it that we knew that that's what this field actually looks like. In the Native American traditions, for example, the Hopi Indians, they say that in the very beginning, at the Big Bang, the way they describe this is the emergence of this world. They say the first thing that happened in this world is that Spider the insect, Spider grandmother, emerged into this world. And the first thing that Spider grandmother did was to weave the web that would connect all of her children in the future. And that's the language of the Hopi Indians. In the Buddhist traditions, there's the story in the very beginning of the great god Indra, I-N-D-R-A. In the beginning, Indra, in a distant galaxy far away, began to weave the web that the Buddhists call today the great web of Indra that holds the universe together. So the words in the analogy, it's very interesting how similar they are thousands of years ago. How did they know what we are only now beginning to understand in the language of science? And this is why, to me, it makes sense to go beyond science into the wisdom of our past. Because science is a language. It's a good language, but science is only one language that describes our world and our universe. And there are places where science has not yet understood how everything works. So there are other languages that describe our universe as well. So what happens? What happens if we go into our ancient past and if we marry the language of our past with the language of science? If we marry the wisdom of our past with the wisdom of today, doesn't it make sense to do that, to understand who we are and how we work in this universe? And that's why it makes sense to go into the ancient monasteries